Ryan,
All right. Good to be back.
it's 2024.
New year.
When the heck did that happen?
Seems like it's been a hectic year already, but just getting started still.
So, what I want to do today is there is so much I want to talk about. There's no way we could do it in a single episode, but I want to focus on, the whole year end. Talk about what all happened in 2023, celebrate a little bit, and then
As we
what we're looking
should.
forward to in 2024.
Hopefully another reason to drink.
There's good things and bad things that both give you a good reason to drink.
That's true. I'll never be out of business because of it.
Anyway, cheers, man.
Cheers. Is
Love
that
it.
the journeyman you're drinking I saw?
Yeah, I don't know if getting that camera when we're like side by side, but kind of doing a Michigan theme the last couple days.
Right on. That's a great one.
The Lions are going to the Super Bowl. I'm going to be meeting up with some family from Michigan this weekend, and it's all about Michigan right now.
Very nice.
So the first thing I just want to get into is the whole year in review. It's a pretty normal tradition. You make a New Year's Eve resolution. And most of the holidays are kind of like looking back and seeing what happened the past year. Doing this a lot more, though, I feel like we have done more than most people have in a year. So it's January 25th, and I am still going through my list of notes of things that I want to review and think about for the next year. It's pretty great. But just to consolidate it down, I had like a couple questions that I just wanted to go through together with you. I think that'll probably fill our whole hour just getting into that and enjoying it.
I think so. It's, like you said, been a crazy busy year, and it's been a great one.
And I feel this is most important for us. I have learned so much this past year, just anytime I would stop and reviewed my previous work or just thought about what I've been doing. And I think it's also really probably one of the most beneficial things we could give to our listeners. Take time and think about what you've done, what you want to do for next year, and our little discussion will probably spark ideas and thoughts that you have that would apply for yourself. So take January, whatever's left of it, and do that for yourself. So the first question I got is, what are 5 things that you know now or can do now that you couldn't January 2023?
Man, it's crazy thinking back and when the last year started and some of the things where I forgot that was just last year I had started them and didn't realize it now. Like the start of last year, first episode of my podcast came out. I didn't even know there was a normalize button for different recordings to make it all sound similar volume. I was trying to go in and change each individual part's volume by hand, and it was taking me 2 hours to do 10 minutes of editing when it should have been 30 seconds.
So wild.
I'm still embarrassed by that one. That was probably the biggest time saver that I've learned. I like to think that I've found a little bit more of a voice for when I'm recording. It's a little more consistent batch to batch now of this is the voice I sound like when I'm going to speaking to the microphone.
Let's go through these one at a time. So you give me one.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about. We'll go 5 and then 4 and then 3, 2.
Gotcha.
So your first one was the normalize button.
Still embarrassed that I did not know that was a thing.
I actually love this because this shows how authentic this is, how much you and I were really just starting from zero. On one hand, that makes anything we've accomplished since then today even more impressive. But I kept thinking about this over and over, that I really love what we're doing right here because it helps me so much when I hear stories from people that are still learning it instead of the person who's gotten really great and forgotten it. But the problem is the person who can actually record these things and tell these stories are the person who knows how to do all this stuff. So the fact that you were willing to like, do that podcast, even when you were still like trying to figure out how to deal with your dynamics and your audio recording, that's amazing. How we're so lucky to have that.
It's definitely good looking back on and being able to see how much I've grown. Oh, hey there. Can't have an episode without him making an appearance.
Hey, Wesley.
But it's great being able to look back in that, and that is definitely a marker of how much I've grown, is just something as small as that, and knowing that it's out there. It's such a helpful, just time saver, helps me keep on moving through it. I'm not having to direct so much of my time and attention to something little.
That feels like a normal order, going through the small stuff and then getting to the big stuff and then making the small stuff invisible where it won't take up any time.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'll go next. It's been a wild year. When I started all this, I didn't know what the hell an exposure triangle was. There's so many things, but what I'm starting for number 5. A year ago, I did not know how to pilot a camera drone.
That is an impressive commitment that you had there, and have an official license to where you can request airspace and everything. That is an amazing achievement.
Yeah, I feel good about that. That part might have been the least artistic component of everything I've done on my journey this past year. But it was hard work, and being forced to study the clouds just for flight reasons, like, it's changed the way I look at the world. I think it was an odd choice to start with drones. Most people, they start with, you're just a recording podcast or you're doing something visual with your phone, and then eventually you get like a camera, and you're like, okay, let's get a camera that goes in the sky. So I kind of started on the back end and went the wrong direction. And in some ways that made it harder. But the way I look at...
Sorry, you go.
The way that changed how I just look at the sky immediately, and having that be part of all the other work I did since then, I'm pretty grateful for.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I'm sure starting out with piloting forced you to think about movement of camera and how that affects your shot and everything. That's got to be a great lens to go into filming with, so that way you're not just thinking, set up a camera, get it white balanced, everything exposed right, and then just have it sit there. You're immediately thinking about movement and feeling.
Yeah, you actually make a really good point. This is why I'm so glad we work together, because every single thing we discuss, you like add another couple layers of insight that I never realized before. I feel like you're right on that, and because of that, it actually taught me more about how to learn all these things before I started it. How to learn like all these science things that I've been doing most of my life is a completely different way, emotionally and mentally, than learning how to do this artistic, creative stuff. And since I had that experience where I was like, okay, the camera goes here, oh my God, don't crash into the building, oh, where are the power lines? And always like super far out because it's so like dangerous to get up close. The second I got like a real camera, I was like, oh, this is so easy. I'm not going to get a felony if I've had like a drink in the past 8 hours. I can get real up close. No one's going to get hurt. And if I'm going backwards, worst case scenario, I trip, and that taught me like, holy crap, it's important to pick whatever the easiest, smallest things is your first time. So you can just immediately learn all those really easy lessons super fast. It's like if the bulk of the ABCs were on Mars and you did like a 10-year mission just to get to Mars to learn the ABCs, like you could have just done that at the library.
You definitely went for the moon with your first lesson there.
Sometimes learning things a hard way teaches you something else. So with everything else, it's been, okay, pause. What are we doing here? What is the easiest, smallest version of it? Can I do it? Let me drill 100 of those. And then after I've learned everything I can from that, let's do the harder thing then while it's effortless.
Absolutely. So, jumping into the second one then was finding my recording voice, and it was
Ryan's recording voice.
It sounds stupid and small, but being able to go back and re-record just one segment or one line that I stumbled my words and didn't notice. And not having it stick out like a sore thumb and have to re-record the whole thing is such a good peace of mind just to have, and takes a little bit of stress off of me when I'm editing.
Is it how you just make those mistakes less often, or you're able to not make you're able to edit those easier? What exactly do you mean by this?
Rather than I have to make sure that I have it all right the first time recording, I need to have a clean take of everything to make sure that it's good. I can record it. If I mess up on one little spot and I notice it during editing and don't have a clean take, I can normally break out the microphone again, re-record that one small segment, stick it in, and maybe just hit the normalize button, do a little tweak here and there. But for the most part, it's going to line up to where no one's going to notice.
So you can record the extra material needed and edit it to make it seamless and have a complete clean version.
Then it just feels more consistent now, episode to episode, versus if you go back and listen to first episode Shackleton, you can tell my voice is a little higher pitched. It's speaking at a different cadence. Just doesn't have the same feel to it as if I get on the microphone now.
This, for me, is the part that I'm most excited about for you. You completely blew us out of the water, just nuclear with your writing skills. And your very first episode, Shackleton, loved it. The biggest thing that felt like it's changed is your voice. I am happy to hear that's coming across, that your recording process is faster and easier. So you're spending more time on creating instead of on the technical things. But especially for me, in between episode 9 and episode 10, when you had spent a lot of time working at your and brand ambassador job, it's so wild that so much of this stuff, it's not about having a manual or a teacher. It's just literally shut up, get out, and do 10, 50 hours of it. And it was just like you'd come back from, Jedi training. The way you speak's like, yeah, this is great. Let's do this. It still has all of that dry humor that we love, but it's just there's more of it.
I did make a few jokes to a few people about how I'm doing dry January. I'm still drinking. I'm just having dry jokes now.
Side part is I love that they've made Carnivore Month January. So it's like, I can do that. That's a trade I can make.
I did not hear about that, but now I'm feeling I may have actually made that still.
Look out, Wesley. Ryan's going to eat you next.
Oh, no. Sometimes I sneak him a little treat here and there.
So I love that. I'm looking forward to working more on vocal things this year. I feel like a lot of last year was getting, all the basics done, and now we can focus on specialization or whatever the most powerful 80-20 is. And man, voice is it. And I have a whole lot of things. I've actually started doing some work on that with Dustin, and I have a conference I paid for in March, which is pretty expensive. So I have to have all my skills up to speed by March. That's the deadline that's in the dirt. But I just know you're going to do what you always do, is turn out to be really great at stuff. You're going to have to turn around and you're going to have to teach me some of what you're learning.
A lot of this is just coming from consuming content for so many years and just consuming as much of it as I can, and now it's almost instinct to where I'll do something at first and I have to go back and think, okay, why did I do it this way? Why did it work? Why I'm just copying the people that I know were successful and stood out to me.
So it comes back. Review helps so much.
Oh, absolutely. Hindsight's 20/20, right?
All right. So next one for me was learning how to plan shots, especially with video. There was a lot of learning that went on with just what a good photo composition's like, but having moving things, like, are you moving this direction, that direction? And I know that was one of the most painful lessons I learned. Like, it was emotionally agonizing. But then when found the right material and had enough time to think with it, it's like there is kind of a different sense in each of these shots. I think we had a good discussion about that together. And when that came together, it's like, this is awesome. I know I'm still like a beginner. I need more practice to like get fluent at this, but I know like this will feel this way. If I want this emotion, I should use this shot in this way. And there's intention behind it. One of the most things I was really proud of, very boringly, was when I did that mock ad for that condo building down the road from here. And that was the first time
It looked like it was something you pulled off their website. It absolutely could have been a real ad.
It looked so different because that was the first one I sat down, both having the knowledge of what the different shots do, and sat in my truck and looked at it like, okay, well, first we'll do this, and then I'd like to have that. What else would be good? Okay, and had that plan beforehand. And that's high on the list of things that I know how to do now that is really big value.
Very nice.
I want to end that bullet point with just one part. Most beneficial thing I've heard of any of it, zoom up to something really close when people are going to grab onto it. Shove that to any situation which people touch anything. It gives this immediate tactile feel to it. Even though you're not physically touching it, your brain just thinks you are, and you remember the feel of the skillet in your hand or the barbell in your hands. And that's such a great like beginning to the next segment of things going on.
Absolutely, I love that. Just texture is something that you can't really describe it as much. You just show it and get that quick visual impact. If I just say something's rough and earthy, you have an idea. But if you zoom in on a brick and you see it crumbling, and it just puts you immediately, you know exactly what it's going to feel like, you know exactly the texture, you're immediately in the moment.
It's amazing that visual media can do that. Turns out it can.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, let's hear your next one.
So, I'm actually going to tie back into how you mentioned the last episode with being able to be more expressive and my voice sounding better and everything. One of the things that I've noticed helps with that is using hand movements and being expressive when I talk.
Yeah.
To the point where now if I'm doing my Duolingo Italian, I've noticed that in the parts where I have to practice and speak, I will do better if I start doing the Italian hand gestures and signals.
Oh, like just mild tangent. On New Year's Eve, I was at a party and there was assigned seats, and we met a whole bunch of people. And there was this one lady who was really interesting, part Italian. And we were chatting, and like at the end of the night, she just as a joke, she's like, "Do you even remember my name?" Because like we drank with a mission. Well, let's put it that way.
As you should.
And without a beat, by the only time I actually remember the name properly, I just look like, "Your name is Christiana."
Hey, those hand gestures, it really does. You get that movement in your body, and now your voice sounds more energetic, more active. It gets it to be the right pronunciation. You get that right energy. If you're just sitting cramped in, like how I was in Nashville for when I was recording episodes, I was sitting in my closet, putting blankets over all the walls so it wouldn't have as much sound bouncing off. And that was my recording studio, sitting on a floor, not moving.
That's an interesting, a challenge.
My voice was not nearly as expressive because I couldn't be.
So much of like everything I'm learning about voice acting, like most everyone's in a small room because that's the only room you can have soundproofed. The minimum I've seen is like everybody agrees you have to stand. Standing gets your body so much more engaged, even if you're not able to move it far.
Interesting. I like
that. But with what you're talking about, the hand gestures, there's that list of like 5, 8, if you count the advanced stuff, things in that course that I've been taking and looking forward to talking with you more about. And the interesting thing is, every single one of those that you do and you kind of ramp up, a couple will tag on a little bit with you. And the more of those you start to incorporate, the more things that tag along together. And then you can get almost all of them up to like 10 out of 10 and have this whole circus going on.
Absolutely. It's everything builds on itself.
Have you thought of anything? Because I know season two is still like being being made. Have you thought about how you can incorporate hand gestures to make your your podcast, your scripted podcast recording a part of it and add to your voice?
There's a few times where I definitely will just be making hand gestures if I'm talking about how they're going on this big journey or something. I'll, of course, use hand gestures. But it's mostly just doing what I naturally would do if I'm in the room with you telling a story and want you to be engaged. It's not as much deliberately putting in, make this hand gesture here or anything like that in my notes.
This actually might be something you're an expert on because when you're telling stories at the bar or at your display table, you have all these glass bottles full of alcohol. You're a lot more careful about not knocking things over with your crazy hand gestures. So adapting to that, like, well, I'm in a closet. I can still talk, but I'm in this realm of safety.
It was definitely, this is your space, and whenever we had new hires at the bar, the first thing I always told them is, don't make drinks on the back bar or anything like that. This little bar space with the mats, that's your stage. People are there because they want to see a show. They could buy just like a beer down the road. They want a cocktail, you make it in front of them, you give them that show. This is your stage. So knowing this is my space where I'm performing definitely helped put me in a mindset for that.
I like it. I like this one a lot. Yeah, we're getting some good ones.
It's been a good year.
Ready to go on to the next one?
Absolutely.
So the next one for me, number 3, I learned managing online advertising campaigns. Holy freaking cow. It's old. There was that last course, which actually started to dip into business skills. You had the one guy who was the artist, Anthony, kind of like, okay, I'm going to be over here. Here's my partner. And the other guy, completely different attitude, completely different skill set. Like the business guy that does the other half. And like, whoa, this is another big shift of trying to learn this stuff. And it feels different to learn this, required different learning skills to learn that way. But man, that stuff was really great. Added another layer of insight for, I think, everybody. There's a certain level of you want to find a way that you could monetize this. Like you definitely want to make stuff that you're proud of. And then you want to make stuff that actually has value to other people. It feels good to do that. At some level, you need to find some way to pay for your time doing this so that you can buy more time to do even more of it. Even if your goal is really just to do as much of this as possible, it's sort of like, gift to the world, the more hours you can afford to do this, the more of it you'll be able to do. And the cornerstone of that was the online advertising. There's what goes into it. There was a lot we discussed where like writing an advertising script versus a entertainment fictional script. But the whole actual thing of, going into Facebook or Google, registering for an account, all of the things that go into getting approved. For me, particular, my product involved alcohol. So there was a lot of extra knowledge that took like another 5 days to learn of what can I do, how can I avoid getting banned, and a lot of ads just got rejected, and that was a learning experience. And then the whole thing of, okay, we got stuff, great, you send ads, it goes out. There's so much more to it. There's a lot of AI. Everyone's going nuts about AI, and you should AI for like writing your script and your videos and edit it. I think most of that's probably garbage. I'm a former AI scientist. I might have credibility on the topic. But this topic, legit, so much good AI has been used for a very long time. It's machine learning if we're being technical. But there's a whole lot of things where you make the ad, you make a great one with all the knowledge you have, but you shove it out there, and it links to, basically, for lack of a better word, cookies. And you get feedback back to the machine that knows, okay, these people listened to this much, these people liked it, these people liked it. And it slowly starts teaching the online ad management platform you have, like, oh, we should be looking for these kind of people. It's kind of doing market research on the fly, which is just very technical, incredibly powerful, and, really funly surprising thing. I have people in my class who like, I just put it out there and it slowly started learning. It turns out that people in, you know, like Croatia, like really are into this kind of thing. I don't know anything about that place because I don't have enough time to learn every country in the world. Now that I'm aware of it, look into it. Yeah, there is a really big deal. And so he starts to like focus more, learn more about that culture, learn more about the types of things they are doing with it. So he actually kind of gets better at the skill he's building and makes a separate program that's specifically for that demographic and actually is better to make something valuable for their needs. It's really interesting. It's powerful, but, it's awesome.
Just thinking here, if I'm sitting across from a table from you and trying to sell you something, I'm going to change my sales pitch based on how you react to things. Do you think we'll ever get to the point where you can have an ad that's basically just a decision tree, and depending on how whoever's watching it reacts, it will change on the fly?
That's, theoretically something we could do in the future. I think it's never going to be the most efficient or economical one. I think it's just much more efficient where you make a whole bunch of things and then it will go out and then you'll find out what are the people that are attached to it. And then you can make a variation. Okay, well, we're closest on this one and that one. I'm going to split this one to a version that's even more homing into that. No, better way of explaining it. Each one of these, you see which one's attaching to any sort of relevance to people. You take that one then and you make 3 versions of each one of those. And then you see what of those actually resonates from people. So it's not so much as like this interaction. I don't like that part. Okay, wait. The next second's got to be changed. Like, no. You just make so many iterations that you're the artificial intelligence. You keep making multiple variations, seeing which one of those are more popular. Make another variation that's so of that type. And, for the program I was in, they talked about when they're getting to the end of it, they had success, they were getting people, but they were down to, we have this one type of ad that works really, really well. And we're just changing such small things as the color of the background and the font and stuff like that.
And those little details, it's amazing just thinking back to like marketing classes I had taken in college and how McDonald's red and yellow makes people feel hungry. And having a friendly font and things like that. It's amazing how nuanced this can really become.
Let's hear your next one.
All right. So the next one for me is that less is more. And where that comes into play is when I was finishing out what turned out to be season 1 of my podcast. The last episode that I released was, I think, 8 minutes long. And I think it had maybe 2 effects, and one of them was just a guy playing bagpipes. And I had 3 people tell me that was one of my best episodes yet, and I needed to do a part 2 on it. And it was something I had just rushed to put out something.
I remember our discussion about this. Go on.
Knowing that sometimes putting in effects and doing something, while it might seem really cool to you, it can be distracting to your listener or your audience of taking away from your main point. It's distracting now. It's not helping you out.
Yeah. I run into different versions of that in my progress too, where I just spend so much time and get burned out thinking that the more I stack, the better it will get. That's why I did with my script. And that's why my script took 3 weeks when it should have taken 5 days. And like you said, in hindsight, having more sometimes reaches the point where it's too much and distracting from the whole thing.
Well, I like to think back to if you watch like a kid's school project where they throw a effect in between every slide transition on a PowerPoint. Okay, yeah, it's fun. Sure, you're a kid messing around. But it doesn't come off as sophisticated. It doesn't come off like you really know what you're doing. It just seems childish at a certain point and immature.
I feel there's a lot of different parts and ways to do this, but if I could, there's one explanation I want to just hit. I read that book from Stephen King about how to write, just Stephen King on writing. And the part that hit me the most was he was talking about how to describe a scene. And that's something I I would always struggle with. With my sales script, I went overboard, putting too many like tactics into it. Whenever I would write something nonfiction, like okay, like you gotta have like the carpet and everything. Like you gotta know everything. You can't see it, so you gotta tell them everything. And then I read the Game of Thrones books. Loved the show. Hated the books because he would describe so much that after 2 pages, like I don't care. And in Stephen King, he gave an explanation that is brilliant and easy to follow. And it was describe the number of things in the environment that the character would notice. If you went there in his mood and in his purpose and intent, what would you see and feel? You wouldn't notice every single detail, but you might know, like, okay, like I just can smell the fish at this fish shop, or like I feel how like slippy the floor is because I'm gonna like rushing because I'm gonna like punch somebody. Like whatever it is that would be the things that you would notice, and all the things that would just blur into the background, you don't need to mention those.
That makes so much sense, and is so simple that it's annoying I haven't ever heard that.
Bloody same here. It's brilliant, but all of this stuff is that way. The answer is just obvious, but you couldn't invent it yourself.
God, I mean, that's such a great way to also set pacing in whatever story you're trying to tell. I'm thinking now back to like Count of Monte Cristo, when Dante's is in his cell and he's in there for years. You have a very clear mental image of basically every inch of his cell because you are stuck in there with him. Versus
he's not moving very fast. There's nothing else for him to do.
It sets the tone so well by doing the exact opposite, or, well, same thing, I guess, because the character would notice every little bit he's been stuck in this one small prison cell for how long.
God,
that
for the pacing, I think it's probably the best thing. It also ties with something that you taught me about how if you leave gaps, that leaves a room for the audience to imagine things. You can get clever and say, well, instead of saying this word and that word, if I use this one sophisticated word, it kind of hits them both. But there's a lot to be said for leaving something unsaid, but the next logical, obvious thing. So the reader or listener begins to start filling in the blank and imagining the rest. And that makes it more real because they are the one who created that. If you give a hint, instead of describing the color of the walls of the sushi bar, if you just like the smell of the fish and the song coming through it, and enough that that triggers me the memory of being in a sushi bar, they're going to paint an entire vivid picture of everything inside it.
Absolutely. Or if I just say you sat down on a bar stool, you probably sat down on a bar stool and you're going to think of, I've had this experience. It's probably going to be a leather top bar stool, metal frame. Someone else might think tiki bar and it's a wood frame. End of the day, it doesn't matter, but you're filling in those details.
Yeah. That's something I'll love to play with more and more in the future.
It's amazing how a little goes a long way with so many things, and how often I want to overdo it.
Like, I hope this will apply to you, but I think it's the same lesson that I'm going to give myself, and the number one lesson I'd give to anybody is try to do smaller and then do many loops. It feels like you should do everything because you should master everything and you want to give your audience like the best thing in the world possible. But going, okay, this is what it would take to do something pretty. We could do this in a day or a time. Do it, make it, get it out there, and come back to it. And next thing you know, you're going to be actually making people feel an entire 10 pages worth of world building in 2 lines.
Right, so was the less is more one on your list too, and I happened to hit it, or was that just a long tangent?
That was a long tangent. I'm trying to keep up with you, man.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was on yours too.
No, it's good. I'm so glad to do this because I talk too bloody much. So knowing that there's going to be stuff on your list, like, okay, I can skip a couple of things, so there's a good chance that Ryan will hit something good too.
Hey,
so number 2.
I'm amazed we haven't had an overlap yet.
Yeah, there's so many things. I'm so excited about that. It feels like, to me, I've kind of gotten to the point where all of the basic learning is sort of done. And there's like a million things to all of this. So like there's so much stuff in our fingertips, but now we have to like the joy of doing something with it or figuring out which of those paintbrushes is the most important and making those like super impressive. Okay, so getting on to like my number 4, something that I can do now that I couldn't do a year ago, editing. I never thought about this. I never cared about this. I had derisive opinions about this. It was taught to me as like a side effect from the drone videography course. And he really leaned into it. I'd probably say there's almost more editing training in that class than drone and cinematography stuff. And dude, Alex Harris was right. That was the most important thing. It's so impactful. There's been a lot of things that I've come back to, even just this month, where it's, okay, I got to do this next thing. We're actually building something. Like I'm saying, we're actually getting something out, making smaller things, whatever it takes, do something, get it to completion, learn from the whole process. And then I get that giddy thing, like the little raccoon hands. I'm going to do a skill I already have. I can just do it. I don't have to spend 3 hours, 10 hours learning how to do it and then suck at it. Go to the editing part, and man, it's magic adding. Now that it's going fast enough that I can watch the process, you have this, well shot thing or well recorded, podcast like we're doing. And then the editing happens. You're like, wow, this is like 10 times better. I'm so glad I had smart mentors to force me to learn the things that I never would have chosen on my own.
It's such a useful skill. And just to clarify, is there one specific type of editing that you're talking about, be it video editing, audio editing? You made a logo that's animated, and I'm sure there's editing involved in that.
Yeah. For this, I'm talking about video editing. Okay. All those ones are really useful and helpful. I think video editing has such a oversized power to it. The amount that it multiplies the impact and usefulness of like what you have, it's unbelievable. And like I'm going to say 2 things about that. The first one is when I got to the part about ready to release my online whiskey tasting, and I needed to make smaller ads. It was just this wonderful feeling. It's like the happiest thing I had for Thanksgiving to know, oh, I have this old recorded material, and if I edit it, which I have experience not just how to do, but like why you would do and what you'd want to do with it. Alex was really great teaching you that part. I could just tap into this, and it's going to feel completely really new. And in the real world, it is new. And that was great. It looked nice. It felt nice. It was pretty effective.
Hey, love hearing that, and you did a great job on it.
Yeah, that's a good experience. Glad I did that. All right. Forgot what my second point was, so we'll go on to your number 4 things that you can do now.
4 or 5 are we on to?
I have 1 left, so that should mean that you should have 2 left.
I started, so it's my last one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm backwards. Thanks, man.
I was worried I miscounted there for a second. So the last one is something I'm still learning, but have learned to appreciate it, which I never have before. That's the use of hashtags. I still don't fully understand it, other than it helps the algorithm know what's actually in your video so it can recommend it to the right people and help you get the right audience. And this comes back to the trying to get on the Arctic expedition and having them tell me use these hashtags and seeing how much of a difference just 2 made. It's something I'm going to more appreciate and do my best to actually figure out how to use the right hashtags, what's a good number to use, and force myself to understand it better.
So you got forced to use it. It's new. What have you started to see or guess it might be?
I'm guessing there's something with how many you use, and then hopefully the algorithm will take that into account of, oh, this should be focused more on this group rather than spread out all across these. I have no idea if that's true or not, or if that's just thinking about how I would do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to be trial and error and Google searches for a lot of that one.
It's very similar to what the machine learning advertising engine does. It's looking at what would be the exact right group, and sometimes it's actually a question of the right size of the group. When I was doing my stuff, it wouldn't just be a question: do we want to talk to whiskey people, gin drinkers, or non-alcohol drinkers? It literally could be: should we be talking to whiskey drinkers, Irish whiskey drinkers, Middleton whiskey drinkers, Middleton 2023 whiskey drinkers? This is inside those other groups, but knowing how small of a group to target is a really big deal. And if I could try to put in terms that might connect with you, it's what level of closeness do you talk to someone at a bar? Someone walks in, you're not going to go super deep because you don't know the guy. That would be kind of rude. But you're going to talk to him as a friendly person. And that's kind of how, from what I understand so far, of the good hashtag usage is. If you record an episode about Shackleton and you just write podcast, that's going to be too big. If you have something incredibly detailed, there might be only 2 people. There's not much of an art market there. But if you, oh my God, this is connecting with the whole business training I got. You want to find a niche that hasn't been explored before. So there's a lot of people in it, but no one's ever mixed those 2 things together to target that specific group. So when you find the right thing, when I was doing the online advertising, you want to have something that has between 2 and 6 million people that are in that target group. If it's bigger than that, you're just going to get washed out. It's kind of too generic. You might get trounced by somebody who's a multi-billion-dollar company. But maybe there could be a smaller range for us. I don't know what the number is, but there is a certain level of intersection, certain level of correct intimacy, and you can control that by which hashtags you pick.
Interesting. I have never once thought about it in terms of how intimate of a conversation you're having. That is such a new concept to me, but I love the mentality, and that's definitely going to change how I use them.
This is another thing that we haven't talked about before that I'm really excited to discuss more with you and kind of master. I'm really excited about this. This is in some of the courses I've taken. This is a cornerstone path to actually making revenue off of this stuff. But it's also as I've learned, it's another form of really caring about your audience, actually listening to who people are, which is a skill you're an expert at. And something that I'm enjoying whenever I'm able to do it myself.
Oh, you're getting pretty good at it. Don't sell yourself short.
Okay, so hashtags. I think this is actually coming better, part of a bigger thing of our perception of a lot of things. We're finding out they're a lot better than we actually thought they were. We both had very negative views of social media, especially for the kind of things we want to create. That's not a good fit. That's beneath us. And then finding so much of this is, wow, there are really intelligent things about whiskey being shared in 60-second clips. And some of those actually connect people to being interested in watching something longer that ends up being a life-changing thing.
And, I mean, like you said, if you can make new content just by editing down your existing recordings and everything, that's helping your output without really having to take time to write something new or make something new recording. It's such a more time management skills than anything is how I view it.
The telling the same story in a longer form, a middle form, and a short form, it's massively power. That's on the queue of things that I want to work with you more this year during our podcast. And we'll probably have time for that sometime in the spring. There's a lot of neat stuff.
It's amazing how many ideas we have, and we'll see how long it takes to work through.
All right, so ready for the next one?
excited. And
Okay, so my last one, the number one thing that I didn't know how to do that I do know now that I'm most excited about is I have learned how to learn creative skills. It's completely different. Yours, it's nonstop a feeling of uncertainty. There's no black and white, right or wrong answers. And you don't get the feedback of if it was right, wrong, or what until much later. And sometimes never. And most of my experiences that, for the last, 10 years or so, and definitely the ones who have paid for my food and my rent have been things where it's technical and it's yes or no, for certain, you find out immediately. So not only does it require a different way of thinking to learn these things, it emotionally required a very different thing. The hardest part for this entire thing of everything I've learned last year with these 3 times where the level of uncertainty of what to do was just paralyzing, and I want to do this so bad that the pressure against that wall is just painful. And a lot of our discussions is what made me learn how to do this. One of the big things I got from this was you have to be in touch with your emotions when you're doing this stuff. So if you're really tired or really in a hurry or really hungover, or it's a topic where just your whole life you've never been really emotionally connected with that topic, you don't know why looking at a red tablecloth would feel anything to someone. Get your sleep, take your time, do whatever you get to state so you're your peak fighting condition, and then do it. Oh, okay, I'm starting to feel like there's no right, guaranteed yes or no answers, but I got a strong pull. It's this direction. The next thing was getting comfortable with just taking those leaps. If it turns out to be something that only you like, that's totally fine. You have to be comfortable with if it goes that route, and leap before you look. Every single course I've taken has had some sort of version of that phrase in the first day. One was ready, fire, aim. The other one was, I forget, I'll make a list, that'd be hilarious. But every single one was no, for this kind of stuff, you have to do that. The other half of that is...
I was always told, fake it till you make it.
I was told that this is why people died in nuclear accidents and, the software that killed everyone with x-rays. Nothing applies. It's completely different. Everything that would make you a good engineer will make you terrible at creative. Everything that will make you, a great creative will make you a terrible engineer. And I think this is why it's so difficult for people if they want to go from a day job to doing this stuff, which I think this is probably maybe the most important thing for us to share anyone who would be interested in our podcast.
I would say the one piece of advice I can give, if you're struggling to make that translation, especially for something like storytelling, rather than try and write a good story and just focus everything on yourself, take a short personal story, just like a 3-minute story, if that, minute-long story even. Go out to a bar, find a random girl, and see if you can have her attention for a whole minute. Tell that story. If you'll learn what works and what doesn't the hard way, and you'll learn right away whether or not you can keep them interested.
Good advice. Good advice. All right, I think
Believe me, depending on the bar you're at, you can tell how hard it's going to be. Somewhere like Scissors and Scotch wasn't too much to compete with. Every now and then there was something, but for the most part, very, very minimal distractions.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a nightclub, and if you can hold someone's attention for 1 minute in there, good God, you are an expert.
Knowing your audience helps a lot.
Oh, yes. And I think that goes back to even the hashtags, knowing where to find them is a lot. I'm not going to be looking in a nightclub.
All right. So let's talk about our 3 accomplishments of 2023. Still looking back in the last year.
So, I'd say the first one for me is launching the podcast, and my God, I cannot believe it's been a year since I
Yeah,
first
right?
took that step. It feels like it's been so much longer. Like, looking back in my head, I've been thinking of the year as just the last 6 months, not the full year.
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
In some
crazy.
ways, to me, it feels like really recent. It feels like this is like a brand new, thing on Netflix right now.
Uh, I love that it's in your head that way, but to me it still feels like, man, this is only a year. I feel like I should be better at this and I should be doing all these things, but in my head it's only been a year. I've only been able to practice for a year.
Yeah.
Why am I holding myself to standards for someone who's been doing this for the past 5 years?
This is why I really wanted to twist your arm to make us do this review episode for the first thing of the year. It is mind blowing how different our memory of the past is. There'll be times where we feel freaking amazing, and you look back like, oh man, like this is the same as what I did 5 years ago. And there's other stuff like, oh, I hate this. Why is this so hard? And you look back like, oh, I started this a week ago, and this is way better than it was before it. You know, taking the time now to look back at what you had for your first season and the research and the script and the more ease of putting it together that I see in your work now.
Sometimes. There's every now and then there's a story where I think, oh, this one's going to be great, this one's going to be easy to do. And then I go online and there's 5 sources and all of them have the same paragraph copy and pasted, and that's all that's out there.
Yep.
And okay, yeah, that one's not much I can do about that. It's a story from 1263, I think. Okay, yep.
Well, I'm glad you put it together. I'll never stop saying it. I feel like that kind of work that you're doing is a very good niche that's actually culturally significant. It
I hope
adds
so.
something.
I hope so.
Yeah. It's definitely something that makes it easy for me to bring up talking about this to people, and they go like, oh, yeah. One of the things I'm excited about this podcast is it's something that I can reference the spirit of with Ryan Heinzen, and have more like, yeah, like if you're creating stuff and you care about this stuff, this is another great thing you should see. You're going to really enjoy it. And since it's new, you'll understand the process. It's polished enough that's enjoyable, but you can actually see in his entertaining podcast, how do we do that? What did he do? It's really useful.
I'm hoping that season 2 there will be a significant jump in quality just from doing these even and learning.
All right. So for me, yeah, I had to cut some things out of the list. I was surprised because I was sitting there. I looked at the prompt. 3 things I accomplished in 2023. And I'm like, man, there's not really much that's an accomplishment. It's mostly a lot of learning. And then, bam, oh, there's a lot. I'm so much more excited and proud of myself than I was just 24 hours ago. And I had to cut the list down to only have
You're
3.
just too humble.
I don't know if either of those are true. So my first one, I got my whiskey tasting online pre-launch done. Very proud of that. The whole sales didn't really take off that much, so there wasn't a real reason to create the core of the program, like the actual thing to watch, which is the thing I'd be most excited about. But the amount of learning that was required to actually do all of that, it's stuff that's the hardest stuff that even explains, which why I really won't go into a podcast. Because a lot of it was just learning the discipline, learning how to learn creative stuff, this whole mental and emotional shift that I had to do. And then have this, we're going to do this, here's the schedule, and we're going to grind and grind and grind. And the amount of time I put into it, and actually realizing this was a much bigger, more difficult thing to do than I had thought it was. And to actually be able to still do all of those things in 3 months before Christmas. I feel good about that.
And I mean, it's not like product's gonna go bad or anything. It's done. It can sit online, and someone might find it 3 years down the road and buy it. You never know.
The hardest part is done. There's all these things
Absolutely.
where, like, this is the most valuable part, or this part I'm most excited about. But the question is, what's the most difficult? Like, that stuff will be easy to improve and complete and add more. That's my wheelhouse. But all the hard part that we're like, I need to study for 100 hours before I can even do the first second of it. Done. Oh, holy crap. This is the hardest thing I've ever done because it's my first time ever doing this kind of really unusual thing. Also done. All of that. I could have a conversation with someone about it, maybe teach someone else. And my floor is here. It can only get better.
Absolutely. Nowhere to go but up.
Next one.
So next one for me was I hit Whiskey Sommelier level 4.
Mm-hmm.
So grateful I got to be in that first ever class, and I can say I'm one of 15 currently. And as good as that sounds and feels, I'm excited for that number to only go up as there's more and more of us.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge thing. And like what I was talking about, your whiskey level 4, there's more to it that you can even put in a sentence or even a paragraph. It's even only now, after like all more research I've been doing, that I understand how big of a deal it is. I know enough about whiskey to be able to recognize your knowledge and teaching ability of whiskey. You come with these writing skills and marketing skills and formal training in, sort of just understanding humanity.
I'd swear it's the closest thing you could do to being a modern philosopher.
Damn. And then you go ahead and put it into one sentence. You're so good at this.
That's because I've been trying to figure out, okay, how can I get paid to just sit drunkenly on the stairs to a government building and then just spew out nonsense about humanity and people call me a genius.
Mm-hmm.
God, I
Well,
wish I could just be like, yes, a chicken is also a featherless bipod. Your theory is wrong, and now I'm going to go down famously in history because of it.
Ryan, we are going to do that. Just
I'd
stay on
love
this
it.
train with me. We're gonna get a point where like we have a regular audience, and then we can do these one-off adventure episodes where it can be whatever weird philosophical idea you have for the week. It's gonna be great.
Oh, I've got enough whiskey to where I can come up with some fun ideas.
Mm-hmm. Last thing on that before we switch to the next point, I wish they had more elegant names. When it's level 4, it's the highest level there is. I wish the name of it, I could just say a word and just say that, like the ultimate sommelier level, or something that just, instead of 4 could mean anything. That would be great to just say.
I think it helps me keep a little humble too, not saying like, "Oh yes, I am a master sommelier" or something like. No, I think one of the best comparisons I could make is when I studied martial arts. I got my black belt in Taekwondo,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a secondary black belt. And what I was told when I first got my black belt was, "You are not done learning. You are now just a master of the basics. There's so much more to learn." And in Taekwondo, there's only 9 degrees of black belt, because in the Korean culture, 10 is perfect, and you're never going to get perfect. You can keep working towards that, but you'll never get perfect.
The early philosophical rant that I recorded, that was kind of like my gateway into the podcasting thing, was about how perfection sounds great. Perfection would be hell. Because then there's
Oh,
nothing left for you to learn. And learning's the fun part.
I'm realizing now, after making that comparison, how much of my ideas and everything going into this is shaped from my martial arts experience. And in Taekwondo, you get your level 1 black belt. Before you can test for level 2, you have to wait 1 year. From 2 to 3, you have to wait 2 years, and on and on. So, to get a 6th degree black belt, you have to wait 5 years since you got your 5th degree. And just the exponential learning of it, I'm starting to notice that in my skills for podcasting, whiskey, everything is. It takes more and more time and effort the further in you go.
I like that learning, and also I like this topic. Someday I want to do a side episode. This will be great for using your new filming of videos. You know.
Yeah.
Bring the martial arts. Put it on camera. Talk about it. That'll be great.
Oh, I am very rusty. I can't bring the martial arts anymore.
We'll figure out like someone else to do it. Anyway, ready for the next one?
Yes, I am. Let's hear what you got.
Okay, this is gonna sound odd, but this means a lot to me. Also, I feel like this is probably one of the best signs I have that I have learned a lot, actually developed a important level of skill in a lot of things. So there is that film course I was taking, 14-day filmmaker. The guy who runs it, Anthony Gallo. There was one time I get this Instagram message from him. I'm in a lot of like the QAs, like attending and, you know, ask a lot of questions or whatever. So I was surprised. He's like, hey, we're putting together a new ad for the next year. And one, you're still enough of a beginner that this will actually make sense to you and your opinions will be like the audience that we're going for. But two, like, you know, you're putting a lot of work. So I think you'll actually have good input, like feedback. And that already, like, I'm excited because that's where I want to be. The point where, like, I know I'm a beginner. I'm not going to, like, magically turn into an expert, but just be the point where I am someone who knows how to learn, that I'm actually mastering this stuff. I'm getting there instead of just, you know, faking it, phoning. Like, you know, people talk about stuff forever and never actually do anything, or they, you know, whatever. I'm like, this is great. So then I sit down, I watch the ad, and I'm kind of excited about it because learning how to do feedback, how to analyze these videos is a skill that I'm practicing right now because I have to analyze these ads to learn how to make my own better. And then I'd recently looked at your script for one of your, you know, Takasuru episodes, the founder of Japanese whiskey. And that was, you know, another thing where, like, I want to be a good, you know, kind of work partner with Ryan. So I want to be able to get good feedback. That's its own skill. So I'm thinking about it, writing all this stuff down, going through it. I break into like two parts. Like, here's everything. Like, I think this is the tone and and the purpose you're going for. If that's true, I think here's the things that fit. Here's the things that don't fit that you probably want to like either buff up or remove. And then, great. And then here's all the things that I think are just general tone stuff or just questions that I would have. Put it out and like, man, this is like 2 pages. That's pretty a lot for like some guy that you've never even talked to on the internet. Send it to him thinking, like, if it seems weird that I wrote that much or I like, you know, thought that much about it, whatever. I want to learn, and literally like looking through this advertising video and analyzing is 1-to-1 building the skill that I want to do, because my next step is going to be building my own advertising videos. Get a message back. It's like, dude, this is so good. I agree with everything you said. Like, holy crap. Like, if that's true, like that's a big deal, because he definitely knows what he's doing, not just in the video, but also the business and the tone, the marketing, the audience, all of that really important stuff. He's like, dude, this is great. Like, I owe you a favor. If you need me to review something of yours, like in the near time, hit me up, let me know. That was a big deal, you know? So I was very proud of that. One, it's great to like, you know, hear someone say nice stuff about you, but the fact that I've gotten to that level that I can do that means that I am capable at a whole lot of things that I really dearly wanted to get good at last year.
So this is something that I think is going to have to be a goal for both of us, because I think we should be there, but we're not. Thinking of people like that as our colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
I know that personally, I tend to think I'm still amateur at this and just doing it for fun. But I think both have gotten to the point where we can talk about things in such detail. We can give critique. We can call these people colleagues. We need to start thinking of them that way.
I agree. I feel like we're getting there. And I think this is going to be the year 2024. It's going to be the year we're going to do that.
Absolutely. So, my third one, I actually don't have anything written down for this yet. I've been trying to wrap my head around what's a good one. And the things that are coming to mind are just stupid things like, yeah, I moved across the country and didn't break one of the bottles. I'm very happy about that. That's not a good accomplishment. So I'm still trying to think of what is the third thing that I'm very proud of, where it's not just like, I got a dog. Didn't really work for that one. I'd say the biggest
How about with your work?
Not even that. The biggest thing I'm proud of, other than reaching Psalm level 4 and starting my own podcast, is that showing up and just making episodes like this with you, to where now I have someone where I'm producing something with. And I want to start doing that in Minnesota. I want to go out and find another friend. I want to start having it to where I'm recording at least every week now. That's a very lofty goal, but the fact that, we not only did I start a podcast, but I don't know if I inspired you or if this is something you're already looking to do, but either way, we found each other. And we've just made it work. I'm incredibly proud of that.
Taking time and starting to look back through the earlier episodes we have, I'm really proud of what we've made. I'm so glad we've done this.
I'm just so excited that we found like-minded individuals, and we're going to keep finding more people and do more fun things I already know.
Yeah. I want to start having guest episodes. Dustin's agreed that he's going to be on an episode, and it'd be good to have some of the people that you know in the industry or storytelling out in Minnesota. And, as you grow, it makes sense that, like, if you want to do some stuff that you have your own channel, your own podcast that's specifically on a different niche, that's something that I don't really know anything about. That would be interesting to see another thing that you create as well.
See, I actually think we need to do another show where all we do is we go to bars, find a random person, and get them to tell us a story.
Yes. I want to do that, and I think now I have enough audio knowledge that we can do that and it'll still sound good.
I think that'd be just amazing to go out, find a random person, hear a crazy life experience from them, and then how can we turn that into a story where we're putting our own spin on it, putting in all of our talent, basically producing a full show about this one person who could be the most interesting person in the world, but you'd never know it because they're just sitting there having a drink at the bar.
And I really like the sandwich structure. I think that's really powerful. That's on the list of things that I want to add to our podcast as well. I'm trying to just add one thing until I master it to the point where it doesn't take much time, and then before adding more. But that's high on the list, where I think when you're talking about, if you have that recorded conversation with a stranger at the bar, and then you have something explaining it beforehand, maybe a little like, oh, here's our takeaways or the high points, and then you have it happen. Then afterwards, okay, here's how we turned it into a story. And that sandwich, you feel like, I enjoy the content we have here, but that's even more exciting, as if you went on a journey to 3 different locations, 3 different things that all connect together in this kind of,
Plus, then it's easy for us. We have access to unlimited stories out there. It's not forcing us to come up with new stories every week or find stories online or in history books. Let's just go out, and if they have a story where it's just going duck hunting or something, fuck it, yeah, let's make it work.
This was an idea that you had in multiple versions before, and I really like it. How we can use our skills and what we're learning to make and help other people tell their stories better.
Well, I mean, that guy's gonna send it out to all his friends saying, hey, listen to this story about my bachelor party in Vegas that you were with me. Listen to how these guys made it and how fun it was. Don't let your wife listen.
There's so many good angles we could go for it.
It'd be such a fun one, and it'd be such a good excuse to go out there, talk to the people who would be our kind of people.
All right, so there's so many angles to that I'm just going to end it
Yep.
there. We're getting better at that. Like, okay, it was great. Move on. The number one thing I'm proud of in 2023, same. Starting a podcast, this podcast with Ryan.
I knew there was going to be an overlap somewhere.
This is like, there's no way around it.
No.
Like I shown some of the episodes to people now, and like talked to people, and I've seen more analysts analyzing what other podcasts do. And this, so fortunate to just meet somebody who wants to do it and has the skills that you have. Very, very lucky. I didn't even understand how lucky I was until I started sharing our episodes with other people and getting the feedback of, wow, like you guys are a really good partner, good pair to have in a podcast. There's a lot of ways we look at the world that kind of connect, but come from it from a different side. So we like get a bigger picture when we talk together. And the way we present things, the way we tell our stories, you have this very wry, but in some ways kind of very sincere way of talking that it adds words that I don't know how to explain, but I can feel it, that this is like extra that we need and something that I'm not really bringing. And I have like this super like ludicrous attitude. So between it really feels like, together. We don't have like just two people. It feels like when we have a conversation, there's like a room full of four.
I'm not sure if that's just me speaking enough to fill a room, but no, I definitely see what you're saying, and I think it's most interesting when we have two very different views. Like at the start of this, I was more on the, oh yeah, let's just embellish, make this be as crazy as you can, and you were thinking, nope, black and white, right and wrong. And now we've come to almost a middle ground on it, and I think we're both better off for it.
We have more colors in our paint boxes.
Absolutely.
Love it all. So, before we go on to the next question, flat out, thanks, Ryan. I'm really glad you joined. I have gotten so much of this, like, learning-wise and personally. This has been great.
Same.
So, two last questions. Second to last, if you could go back into time, land yourself January 2023, and give yourself some advice for the content creation work you were going to do that year, what advice would you want to give yourself?
Man, there's so much. Like, my first instinct is goddamn normalize button. But that was something where I figured it out relatively quickly and saved me a lot of time. So it's not that big of a loss, and it was an easy thing. I feel like it would have to be a more difficult concept. Honestly, if I was to give myself any advice, it wouldn't be about the content creation. It would just be general life advice of it's okay being uncomfortable. You don't need to be afraid of it. If something scares you, chase it down all the harder.
I feel that's good advice. There's been many times where I came out of something and that was the thing that worked. Like realizing like being scared is a sign you're on the right track. keep
It
going.
means you care about it. That's more than a lot of people will do for a lot of things.
Yeah. If you want to have like a sense you're on the right track for engineering and science, the more safe and comfortable in black and white. If you want to feel like, if you want to know you're on the right track for things with creation and art, the more uncertain, the more scary, the more difficult, the more guaranteed you're on the right track. Just feel that as fuel and keep going.
And I mean, even for getting the level 4 SOM, I remember when that email got sent out to me saying, hey, we're having the first ever class.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
you like to join it? And I went, oh.
Because you know you're going to.
I thought I was done with this. I thought I had years before they came out with this. I thought for the first time in 3 years I wouldn't have to worry about going and taking a test or any of that. And now you're telling me the first day I have to take 3 tests. Yeah, I was scared. And then the first thing I thought was, I'm scared. I care about this. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do everything I can to make it work.
That is the stuff. I really think more than you should study filmography or you should have this camera angle. That is the real thing that you need to learn to be a success at all of this. And it's the hardest thing to put into words. There you are.
You just gotta do it enough to get comfortable with it.
I love it. So let's get moving. Ask me the same question.
Yes, if you could go back a year, even a little before a year, what would be the piece of advice you'd give yourself?
There's a lot, and it's hard to pick which one, but that's what we're doing. I would tell myself to learn how to slice everything into even smaller pieces. And just whenever you start feeling that stressful anxiety that this is too big or it's too confusing or I don't know what the next thing is, just look at it and find a way to slice it into smaller pieces. Because almost every time that I got burned out, there's a lot of ways I could explain it. Earlier in this very episode, I was saying, oh, that's because there was so much uncertainty and I'm not used to dealing with that yet, and I haven't built up the endurance for that yet. But it really is just another way of looking at it is I thought the thing I needed to do was this size. And so I went with that much time. When the reality is I just wasn't smart enough to know that it's actually this big. And when you get to that anxiety is telling you that it's way bigger than you thought it was. You didn't understand how big it was. There's like more pieces in this. And then just take a deep breath and look at it and go, okay, well, what are all the pieces in this? And we actually start writing them down, write down the smallest piece possible. You might actually like, oh, actually, that piece is really freaking huge. Or that piece will only take 10 minutes, but I don't know how to. And the learning to do that would take a week. And then I think I would sit back and have a better experience last year. Probably learn faster and go like, oh, yeah, it's just a bigger project. Bam. This is what I got to do. I could feel good about it. And when you're feeling good about it, you go faster. You learn more. And one of the things I want to get out of doing this podcast is hopefully some people out there, even one person, they maybe accomplished the same thing, but they had a better time doing it. I would like that.
Oh, I'd love to hear or see what people are inspired by us to create. Definitely, if anyone does anything from this, I want to see it. They have my full support.
Absolutely. I'm going to start posting these on YouTube so we can get comments, and anyone who actually has like something they want to share, they can link and post it in there. We'll actually get to know what that is instead of just having it a one-way direction.
Love it.
Okay, so the last question is, give me one goal you have for 2024. What's one thing that when we're sitting here, January 2025, that you want to be able to say, oh, yeah, this is something I have done now or I can do now?
So this sounds very ambitious. I want to triple the amount of content that I create from last year.
Yes.
Not double, triple.
I like that a lot. man, I love how much is like this tacks with what I wanted to like talk about for the next year. I think in a lot of ways we're kind of like on the right path, similar that we understand. Not just be able to make it, not just be able to make it at high quality, but systematize it where you can do it quickly. Not that it's sloppy. It's just the same things you're doing. Take all the crap out. Take all the things that take time that aren't the creative part and make the creative start flow faster so you can make more. I want to hear more of your episodes. Everyone I know wants to hear more of your episodes. And the best part,
no pressure,
is the more episodes you make, the better you're going to get.
Absolutely. And I mean, looking back, I think I hit maybe 2 hours, hour and a half of content last year, so it's all in all not a crazy ask to triple it in a year.
Mm. And you said that, that more minimalist episode about Scotch was something you did feel good about. I remember when you were talking about it at the time, you were a little upset. You're like, man, I don't like being pressed into a corner. I really care about this. I want to do the best thing possible. Worried that if I know I can make something that people like lazily, I'm just going to get lazy. But that making a lot of small things with 85% of the ability you have that day is a beautiful tactic I learned from this guy named Ryan.
It's amazing that you learned that from me, because I still haven't learned that.
It's so much easier to say the words than to actually build the skill.
Do what I say, not what I do, right?
So yeah, I would love to see that. And I'd love to see you kind of do the podcast, the recorded scripted podcast version of telling the same story, long, short, medium. Have an episode where you put a lot of time and effort into it. Have another episode where you just do it really quick, as you're not lazy because you're like a craftsman, but do it like, abstract art where you're throwing paint at the wall, but your heart's telling you what to do. And then do something that's kind of like middle amount of production quality. See how you felt all about those. You probably learned a different lesson from each.
So that's going to tie into another goal I have for this year.
Let's hear it.
I'm going to start doing more short form content, posting just like video of, hey, here's me recording just a quick story about one bottle, because it's like that one from 1620 something where it's a paragraph. I can't make a full podcast episode on that, but I could record just a minute-long video sharing the story.
Yeah, I like it. Let the story tell you how long it needs to be.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll go with two goals I have. So one is I want to, redo the online whiskey tasting thing. I know it needs a physical component. That's why I didn't really worry too much about what the result of this purely online was, because I know it needed that, and I need more time. I want to have the tasting kit that I can mail out to somebody, something where you just sit there, it shows up, everything's taken care of. I think that's something that I want to do, I think be proud of, and then polish up the actual episodes that go into the presentation that I recorded. I want to have those polished and top notch. I think if I actually do more of these in person, that'll help me learn more about how to do that. So that's another angle making that better. So I want to do that. That's number one.
Great goal, and I mean, I think you'll easily be able to do that and knock it out of the park. Just from how much it seems you've learned from the experience of creating that first draft. And you've got nowhere to go from up, and that was already a great, solid first draft.
Putting this together, like the outline for this episode, thinking about what I did last year, man, the amount of things I learned took so much time. So now just kind of have that. I don't have to do it again. I already know it. I think I will be able to get more externally done, things visible that other people see, have more created results than I thought possible this year. My second goal, I want to, by the end of 2023, be creating stuff that not just I'm super proud of, and not just that I want to create stuff that is valuable enough to other people, that they really enjoy it. It actually is useful, enjoyable. It adds something. They're glad it exists to the point where it's worth something to them. Something that we're like, we can, prove it because they'd be willing to put their money where their mouth is. Like, whatever form it takes, no matter how small it is, I want to be just making something where I can just look at and say, I can tell this definitely meant something for somebody because they were willing to give or sacrifice something to have it, like I do with a lot of stories and podcasts that I really care about.
So that's pretty close to what I had written down for one of my goals. My third one was I want to collect at least $1 by the end of the year for some content I created.
It's a huge deal. Like, even if it was just like a penny from a person.
One. Yep.
The difference between 0 and a penny is a huge thing.
It's very frustrating to me because I originally hosted my podcast on a different service, and it had different standards in order to get monetization. If I hosted it on the one that I'm using right now, episode 1 would have had enough views to be able to get me monetized.
Oh, well, that's cool to know, though. Hey.
But because I missed out and did it on the wrong platform, I didn't know better. It no longer tracked, and I didn't have that first big hit to where I haven't been able to monetize. So hopefully season 2, having that first big, this is something new, rush to it, hopefully that's going to make it happen again.
So I trying to get these focused on more like 90 minutes, but this is important stuff. I think I would be a bad person if I didn't let you tell everyone. What was the platform that you did that was wrong? What was the platform that you should be doing if you're going to replicate Ryan's right now?
Goodness, I believe the one that I was using was Acast, and it was a good hosting site, very minimal complaints. That was what a few other people that are doing this had told me they had used, and they had the advantage of going in with a bigger following already. So for their purposes, it absolutely worked right out of the gate. As someone trying to build up a whole new audience, I didn't have that kind of draw yet. So now I'm going through, it was called Anchor, and now it's called Spotify for Podcasters. It has the very achievable goal of, I think you have to hit 100 listens in 1 month. And then you can start monetizing through their platform.
Okay, so should do Spotify for anyone starting out now.
Either that, or it does have an option for like linking in a Patreon or something, and I'm not sure if that's a route I want to go with. We'll see how desperate I get by the end of the year.
I'm budgeting myself still another 6 months of purely mastering building skill. All right, so love this. It's been great. The thing I want to leave everyone with is you got your big goal for the next year. What is the next thing? What is the next thing you're going to learn, or the next thing you are going to create?
Oh, goodness. Next thing I'm going to learn. I'm trying to find that out myself. The past couple of years, I've had the easy answer of, well, I'm going to go for whiskey level 2, then whiskey level 3, and then surprise level 4 course. I don't have that easy answer anymore.
Well, how about the next thing you're going to create?
I don't know. I'm excited to find out.
Can we have a guess of when season 2 is going to begin?
I need to figure out when I should set a hard deadline for still. I've got the first episode fully recorded and edited. I'd like to have you record a couple lines for it if you're still willing. But that one's
of course
done. Episode 2 is probably about 80% done. And then I'm having 6 or 7 episodes total this season. I've got another 2 in the can already. So it's a good chunk of the way. It's just the editing and finding the time and motivation for that. Next
All right.
episode, I'll try and have a hard deadline for myself because that gives me a little more kick in the pants to actually get it done.
All right. Well, that's still moving along.
It is. There's progress at least.
All right. For me, the next thing I want to do is we started doing this podcast just hanging out in bars, recording on my phone. It was so bad quality with people talking in the background. No one would listen to it. Then we finally, after 6 months, we started recording at my place with quality microphones. You can actually hear the quality. We made a whole lot of mistakes with the audio and the video, and we still learned like what should we talk about and how long we should ramble. And that's when we actually started recording these that were a good start. The next thing I want to do, the next thing I'm working on, the next thing that you should be hearing about next episode is taking the 6 months that we recorded, editing them, writing show notes for each of the 10 episodes, and then having those ready for everyone published.
God bless you, sir. You are a saint for going through all of them and doing that.
It's my baby. I'm passionate about this. All right, this is great. Always love doing this. We should find some more time to like just catch up like normal people, but January, it's a crazy time of year for both of us.
Yes, it is, and I just want to thank you, of course, for doing this and all the work you put into it, man. I feel like I've got the easiest job here on this one. I just show up and talk, and you're very grateful for having me just do none of the hard part, it seems.
If I'm making you feel that way, that's exactly what I want to be doing. You add a lot, and that, wouldn't be the same without you.
Well, the feeling's mutual.
So let's end this by asking one question for the audience. You first.
Well, I want to know, first off, if they're working on any projects. I want to see what you're doing. I want to help out. I want to encourage. And I want to know what type of project it is and what we should be focusing on these.
I like it. My question is, I want to hear about your 2023. Tell us something that you learned or something that you created that you're really proud of. I really loved looking back at this last year. Thanks, Ryan.
What I'd love to do now that now that you say that, I want to know if there's any just stupid lessons that you've learned where it's like the normalize button where, oh my god, this is such a simple little thing, but it could have saved me so much time. Give me every single one of those, because I guarantee you I don't know all of them.
Those are the biggest ones. Those are great.
My God,
I like that
would make
question.
such a difference for both of us.
Yes, please. We'll share it
Save
with each
me
other.
all that time.
Teamwork. All right, Ryan. I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
I'm looking forward to it.
Mwah.